Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. My name is Lee Holland. I am the president of Montgomery County FOP Lodge 35, and we represent over 1,500 active and retired Montgomery County law enforcement officers. I'm proud to be here today to announce the FOP Lodge 35 endorsement to our former governor, Larry Hogan, to serve as the next senator for the state of Maryland. We know that public safety, especially violent crime, and Maryland economic relief are some of the top priorities for Montgomery County residents and Marylanders across the state. We need a senator who will pay serious attention to these matters, in addition to supporting the brave men and women in law enforcement. During his 8 years as governor, Larry demonstrated leadership abilities and took fiscal responsible approaches to managing the budget, which left Maryland with a $5.5 billion surplus. In addition, during his tenure as governor, he was able to lower taxes and fees for all Marylanders. He has always been a strong supporter and friend of law enforcement who values us and our commitment to serving and protecting our communities. As governor, when others were defunding the police, Larry Hogan created the Refund the Police initiative, allocating $500 million in state aid to help local communities invest in public safety. Because we know through his hard and passionate work as governor, he will continue to strive for the best of Maryland and will provide the resources necessary to keep Montgomery County and all Maryland residents safe and successful. I am so honored and pleased to introduce Maryland's next senator, Larry Hogan.
Lee, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you all for joining us here today. President Holland, Lee, members of the Montgomery County FOP Board, and the entire Lodge 35, the dedicated men and women of the Montgomery County Police Department. I can't tell you how much it means to me to have your support and your endorsement. And I'm always grateful to have the support also of SLEOLA, the State Law Enforcement Labor Alliance, representing 9 state law enforcement agencies, including the Maryland State Police, the Natural Resources Police, the Office of the State Fire Marshal, the Maryland Capitol Police, Maryland Department of Health Police, Department of Labor, Licensing and Regulation Police, the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Intelligence and Investigative Division, and the Warrant Apprehension Unit, the Motor Vehicle Administration Police, and the Comptroller's Office field enforcement agents. In addition, we've been endorsed by the Maryland Troopers Association that represents active duty and retired state troopers. Nearly 30 elected sheriffs and state's attorneys from every corner of the state, as well as the International Union of Police Associations. And this is the first of what we hope will be many of our FOP lodges. This is far more important to me than just any other political endorsement, because for 8 years as governor, I saw how our law enforcement heroes selflessly put themselves in harm's way, and that they do so willingly and bravely so that our community can be a better and a safer place. Today and every day, I want to express our gratitude to the brave men and women of law enforcement, not just here in Montgomery County, but all across our state and our nation, who put their lives on the line every single day to protect the rest of us. And I know this has been a particularly challenging time here in Montgomery County, with rising crime that is spilling over from Prince George's County and Washington, D.C. Now more than ever, your officers deserve to know if your elected leaders will always have their backs. Instead of demonizing and sabotaging the dedicated men and women of law enforcement, they deserve our respect and the tools that they need to do their jobs. And that's exactly the approach that we took for 8 years. As Lee mentioned, when calls to defund the police broke out all across the country, I was one of the first statewide elected leaders in America to strongly push back against that. Saying that you want to improve policing by defunding the police is like saying you want to improve education by defunding the schools. It's absurd and ridiculous. We reversed this trend by dedicating $500 million more in the first in the nation Refund the Police initiative, which increased state aid to local police by 50%, enabled them to hire more police. We provided for recruitment and retention bonuses for law enforcement officers, better training, more technology, and record support also for victim services. We also took every action possible to take violent criminals off our streets. Every year, we push for tougher sentences for repeat violent offenders and people who commit felonies with a gun, despite opposition from the legislature. We pushed for judicial transparency to let people know the sentences that are being handed down for violent crimes. In 2021, I vetoed the Juvenile Restoration Act, an insane bill that stopped accountability for juvenile offenders who commit heinous crimes like murder and rape. We rejected the reckless efforts to turn Maryland into a sanctuary state, and we worked to address the long-term causes, the root causes of crime, to provide more and better substance abuse and mental health resources, and we helped those who had repaid their debts successfully to reenter society. When then Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby was failing to prosecute crimes, we worked with the U.S. Attorney for Maryland to deploy strategic federal assets to get the job done. We provided millions of dollars in state funding to support additional federal staff, including additional special assistant United States attorneys, federal prosecutors for Baltimore who pursued the Al Capone model of pursuing federal firearms, fraud, and other criminal charges against individuals known to be repeat violent offenders. And now that the Prince George's County Executive is running for the United States Senate, she's telling voters that violent crime in her county is down. That is false, as the officers here and their colleagues in Prince George's County know far too well. The facts tell a clear story. Since 2018, violent crime has surged. Homicides have nearly doubled, and carjackings have increased more than 500%. My opponent and I have taken completely different approaches to public safety. As was reported by National Review in a shocking piece just this morning, during the height of the Defund the Police movement, she applauded those calls and put them into action, defunding $20 million for police training that would have helped law enforcement officers accomplish their jobs and stop crime in Prince George's County. This is the last thing that our brave men and women of law enforcement need from their leaders. Here in Montgomery County and in Prince George's, where the county executives have cut police budgets, our officers are severely underfunded and understaffed. In one of her first acts in office, County Executive Alsa Brooks announced that Prince George's County would no longer follow federal law and would refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement. I was glad to hear last week that Montgomery County leaders have finally begun to reverse this policy and to begin cooperating with ICE on detainers for violent criminals. It's time for County Executive Alsa Brooks to immediately follow suit. Prince George's is the largest remaining sanctuary jurisdiction that refuses to cooperate with federal law enforcement. Under my opponent's sanctuary policies, Prince George's County has released violent criminals, sex offenders, and violent gang members who are here illegally, and has refused to inform federal law enforcement who have requested detainers on these violent felons. Governor Moore was right when even he said recently that county executive's policy is violating federal law. As the governor said, this isn't about immigration or immigrants. This is about people who break the law. My opponent also supports abolishing cash bail, which would release defendants accused of violent crimes back onto the streets. Our campaign has launched a 10-point crime plan to make Maryland safer. In the Senate, I will work every single day to support our law enforcement heroes here in Montgomery County and in every corner of the state. And I will lead the fight for a Refund the Police initiative at the federal level. I will continue to support increased criminal penalties for violent offenders and to take the same approach we used to surge to hire federal prosecutors who will focus on getting these shooters off the streets and behind bars, and on breaking up these carjacking gangs and the drug dealers and other organized crime. We will push to hold violent criminals accountable. Yesterday, I had the honor of joining a remembrance walk in Harford County with Rachel Morin's family to mark 1 year since her tragic murder, a moving tribute to her memory and to the strength and resilience of her family. And I thanked the law enforcement officers and the community for their support. And Rachel's spirit will live on in our hearts, and I will work every single day to do whatever I can to make sure that what happened to her never happens in Maryland again. I will work to increase coordination between federal, state, and local law enforcement, just as I did as governor. And I will fight to ensure that local governments are no longer able to ignore federal law. We need to stop these local elected officials from releasing violent felons onto the streets. I will reach across the aisle and bring people in both parties together to support our dedicated men and women of law enforcement and fight to make our communities safer. This is not and should not be a partisan issue. This isn't just about the differences between the right and the left. This is about the difference between right and wrong. And this isn't just the typical fight between Republicans and Democrats. It's more important than that. This is a fight for Maryland's future. And that is a fight worth fighting. And it's why I'm running for the United States Senate.